These are the gentlemen. All right, so it was a meet and greet. They were in there about, well, how long do we think, Mel? About 35 minutes or so? The men were in there with their interpreters. Now they're walking again. What we anticipate now is a working lunch, and then the policy teams are going to take over, and the real meat and potatoes of policy considerations, diplomacy, negotiating will begin. But here they are. Can't hear the president. We'll try to get you some transcripts about what he was saying there. Now, they're shouting questions, not responded to. Somebody shouted to the North Korean leader, will you give up your nuclear weapons? No response, as you saw there on your screen. And again, we believe the men are now walking in the company of their interpreters. The woman with the President of the United States is actually a division chief at the State Department in the area of interpretation. So who knows, maybe both interpreters were wearing two hats as policy experts as well. But now we believe the two men are going to go and join a larger part of the retinues here for a working lunch, and then the hard work of policy begins. All right, back to Santorum and Granholm. Rick, you were about to say something that was going to be a little bit pessimistic, I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, look, I'd like to be as optimistic as Dennis Rodman, but I have to look at this through maybe a different lens. I look at this as really a failure on the part of the United States and the international community of deterring someone from getting nuclear weapons or doing what was necessary to stop them. And this is the consequence. The consequence is that that leader, a despot, has been elevated on the world stage. And I'm not blaming Donald Trump. Donald Trump has accepted the reality that we now have to deal with a nuclear power that has the ability to strike the United States, and you have to deal with that seriously, and you should give diplomacy a chance. But we could no longer ignore him, isolate him, because that didn't work. We didn't, the failure of the Obama, Bush, Clinton, go on back, of those administrations has now set a template for other countries to say, look, here's how you get your security. You go ahead and you defy the international community. You go ahead like Iran is trying.
Well, what's the alternative?
The alternative is to actually do something to stop them. And whether
like
it's
what could you have done to stop them?
Well, you know what can be done to stop them.
But see, that's the point, though,
whether
Rick.
there's the will to do it.
But it's not just about will. See, you have to be careful with language because it makes it sound like a macho contest. And Jennifer Granholm.
It's not a macho contest. Well, it's a reality. It's a national security contest.
Right, but when you are going to take military action, if that's on the table, Jennifer Granholm, former governor of Michigan, the reason that was brushed away so quickly by the Secretary of Defense, and it is dealt with the same way by military experts up and down the board, is because there is no simple military situation, especially given the logistics and the circumstances on the Korean Peninsula, because you have a ton of Americans and a ton of innocents right within artillery range, let alone any of the heavier weapons that North Korea happens. So military action, while it sounds like, well, that was the alternative, is it really?
No, I mean, of course, it's always an alternative, but it is an alternative with such a high cost. So I'm glad that there is an effort here at diplomacy. I do share Rick's skepticism about what's going to come out of this. I mean, it is true that Kim Jong Un has already won by getting the meeting. And so now the question is, if Donald Trump doesn't come out
All right, let me stop you for a second.
Just let me,
Jennifer, 1 second. This is the lunch.
Yep.
This is what we thought was going to happen. So this is now confirmation. You see the North Koreans on one side, the Americans on the other. You see General Kelly there. You see Secretary of State Pompeo there. The woman next to Donald Trump is the division chief of the State Department of Interpretation. Let's listen to the president.
Until this point has been unable to be solved. I know that working together we will get it taken care of. So, good on. Thank you very much.
우리는 함께 협력해서 반드시 성공을 이룰 거라고 생각합니다. 그리고 지금까지 과거에 그러한 현재가 되는 것들은 절하지 않다. 함께 협력하게 되어서 매우 영광입니다.
우리 방법을 지도하고 시작된 그런 과거를 우리가 다 방법을 이겨내고 들어보고 우리 시선과 꼭지를 다 지우고 그러니까 뭐 어떤 하지 않으면 훌륭한 동아의 전주곡이라고 해요.
Well, we successfully took power. We have waiting on time and waiting on believe that this is equally defeat. I believe so.
조금 전에 말씀드린 것 같지만 이때까지 이스라엘을 다른 사람들이 생각하지 못하는 그런 나는 각과 함께 궁금한 추가를 쓰는
I protest involved on in close cooperation with you as a person. Of course, there will be challenges ahead, but I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to do this very well. We will solve it. We will be successful. And I look forward to working on it with you. It will be done.
우리는 힘쓸 것이고 또 문제 해결할 것입니다. 그리고 함께 해결하는 것을 기대하고 있습니다.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so they're going to move media out of the room right now, so the working lunch could continue. Just to refresh, if you're just joining us now, you see Kim Jong Un, the North Korean leader, his head there on the left. You see the President of the United States with his team with him right now. They've had their handshake. They've had their face-to-face alone with interpreters. Now they're having their working lunch. We just heard the president and the North Korean leader exchange niceties once again, saying we will work on things, we will get through, we will cooperate, we will negotiate, all the types of things you imagine here. We have Jim Sciutto there in Singapore monitoring this. What do you make of the events so far?
Well, I'll tell you, Chris, one thing notable about the one-on-one, at the end of the day, they were across from each other, mano a mano, just for about 45 minutes or so. So as Director Clapper made, that's really 22 minutes of conversation, right, with translation. So it doesn't seem possible during that length of time that they had a substantive beyond meet and greet conversation, getting into the nitty-gritty details. Now that's where they are. They're in the working group. So following, you might say, something of the protocol here, that one-on-one that some U.S. allies, I've spoken to Asian diplomats, were concerned would President Trump go further than the allies were comfortable with? Would President Trump go further than his own advisors or intelligence community were comfortable with? In a meeting of that length, it seems less likely. Now they're sitting there with their advisors. That's just one point I would make in light of the length of the one-on-one meeting. Still substantial about relationship building, no question, but raises questions about to what degree of detail they could have gone in a meeting of that length. The other point I would make is this, Chris, is just Kim Jong Un, his father, his grandfather, they have sought for decades parity, respect with the world, right, specifically with the U.S., to be treated on a level. And he has that. He got that. The handshake in front of the flag, side by side, the one-on-one. And remember, what got him there wasn't his charm. It wasn't his diplomatic prowess. It was nuclear weapons, right? And that was why they sought them, part for their survival, for the survival of their regime, but also for respect. Those weapons got them there. And that is one reason why even the CIA assesses, in their view, that it's a high bar, that they view it as unlikely that they give up everything in light of what that got them.
Well, right now, Jim, the question is, will they give up anything, right? I mean, look, the gamble here on the part of the United States has always been clear. You are giving the Kim regime exactly what they wanted. It's very high on their wish list, as you just said. And the open question is, what will you get back? And you have a difficult balance with nukes and human rights.